Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. A helicopter crash near Ukraine's capital has killed at least 16 people, including children, and the country's interior minister, who's the most senior official to die since Russia invaded nearly a year ago. There's no immediate word on whether the morning crash was an accident or related to the war. Mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko.
It's a young guy, very patriotic guy, do it a lot of things for Ukraine and make a police reform in Ukraine and big strategy for Ukraine, for his family, and also children.
The crash is a second large-scale tragedy to hit the country this week after a Russian missile strike on an apartment building killed dozens of civilians. Ukrainian authorities immediately opened an investigation. No fighting has been reported recently in the Kiev area. Meanwhile, Russia's President Vladimir Putin says Moscow's actions in Ukraine are intended to stop a war that's raged in the eastern part of the country since 2014, and their victory is inevitable. Putin said today Moscow had long sought to negotiate a settlement to the conflict in Ukraine's Donbass region, but was duped and cheated. Russian-backed separatists have battled Ukrainian forces in the region for nearly a decade, almost 9 years. Putin today argued their special military operation in Ukraine is, quote, an attempt to stop the war, unquote. He described Ukraine's east as Russia's historic territories and said Moscow had to act to protect its people there. Ukraine and allies have rejected the rationale as cover for unprovoked aggression. The head of the United Nations says the world is in a sorry state because of interlinked challenges, including climate change and Russia's war in Ukraine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres spoke in Davos at the World Economic Forum, where the world's super rich are meeting with heads of state from around the globe. He warns the struggles are piling up like cars in a chain reaction crash.
Add to this toxic brew yet another combustible factor: conflict, violence, war, especially the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Not only because of the untold suffering of the Ukrainian people, but because of its profound global implications on global food and energy prices, on trade and supply chains, on questions of nuclear safety.
Antonio Guterres. A report says companies from at least 13 countries have helped Myanmar build up its capacity to produce weapons that are currently being used to commit atrocities. The report by the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar details how the country has stepped up arms production since the army seized power in 2021, igniting a mass public opposition movement. It says companies in the U.S., Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are supporting the military supply chain and urges the businesses to ensure they're not facilitating human rights abuses. It cites the U.S.-based Haas Automation Incorporated company for selling milling machines to the junta. It also names companies in Ukraine, Germany, Italy, Taiwan, Russia, and Singapore. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners says it's documented more than 2,700 civilian deaths in the violence, including 277 children, while more than 13,000 people have been detained. In the U.S., Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont gave a primetime speech Tuesday night on the state of the working class. Christopher Martinez has more.
The economy is doing extraordinarily well. It's doing fantastically for the people on top, for the billionaire class.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont gave a speech on the working class in America.
Unfortunately, the economy is not doing so well for the working class of our country when we have tens of millions of families falling further and further behind.
Sanders is slated to become chair of the Senate's Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, sometimes shortened to HELP Committee. He talked about each of those areas, with references to some of his priorities like universal health care, debt-free college, union rights, and protecting Social Security. In larger terms, he put the issue in terms of the long-term decline of the middle class, along with growing wealth inequality and its effects on democracy.
What we are witnessing now in this country is the rapid evolution of our society into an oligarchy in which the billionaire class has enormous and growing control over the economic and political life of this country. That is the reality, and that's a reality we must confront.
Reporting for Pacifica Radio News KPFA, I'm Christopher Martinez.
An analysis from a new report shows that police response times are getting longer. The analysis is based on data collected from 15 cities nationwide examining police responses to low-level crime to violent crime. The data showed that cities like Seattle, New Orleans, New York City, and Portland are seeing longer average response times. The group Police Executive Research Forum conducted the study. It says staffing levels at police departments are going down as more officers leave the profession or retire, and the flow of new officers to replace them hasn't been keeping up. Some cities have been dealing with the shortage by referring some non-emergency and mental health calls to civilian agencies. I'm Christina Onestad reporting for Pacifica Radio.